She used to hum while she washed the dishes. It wasn't anything fancy, just a soft tune under her breath, the kind you don't even notice you're making. But her son noticed. He was 5 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor with a toy car, and he would stop rolling it just to listen. Not because the humming was beautiful. He listened because it meant she was there. That sound meant home. His mother had been a piano teacher her whole adult life. Not the kind who performed on grand stages or had her name on anything. Just the kind who sat beside nervous children in small living rooms and showed them, very gently, that music was not something to be afraid of. She had a gift for patience. She never raised her voice. When a student played the wrong note 6 times in a row, she would simply say, "Let's try it again," and mean it. The old upright piano sat against the wall in their living room. It had a few keys that stuck in damp weather and one leg that wobbled slightly, but she treated it like it was the most important piece of furniture in the house. Because for her, it was. Every evening after dinner, she would sit down at it for at least 20 minutes, not to practice, not to teach, just to play. Her son grew up falling asleep to that sound drifting down the hallway. He didn't take to music naturally, the way she had hoped. He preferred football in the yard and video games and making loud, chaotic noises with anything that could be banged against a surface. She didn't push him. She would invite him to sit beside her sometimes, showing him where to place his fingers, letting him press a key and hear what it did. He would last about 4 minutes before something more interesting called him away. She never seemed disappointed. She just smiled and kept playing. He was 12 when she first forgot something that actually mattered. It started small, the way these things always do. She forgot a student's lesson time and had to apologize. She forgot to pick up something from the shop that she had specifically written on her hand. She forgot the name of a neighbor they had known for 8 years. His father said she was tired. She had been working too hard. Everyone forgets things sometimes. That was true, but her son was 12, not 5. And he was old enough to notice that this was a different kind of forgetting. It had a feeling to it, like something being quietly removed. Then one evening, it wasn't a name or a time or an errand. She sat down at the piano the way she did every night. She placed her hands on the keys. She started to play a piece she had played so many hundreds of times that her fingers knew it without her brain needing to do anything at all. But halfway through, she stopped. Not because she made a mistake, not because she was interrupted. She stopped because the music simply wasn't there anymore. Her hands hovered above the keys, like she was waiting for something to come back. Her face went very still. She sat like that for almost a minute. Then she let out a small laugh, rubbed her face with both hands, and said she was tired. She went to bed early that night. Her son stayed in the living room, looking at the piano keys. He didn't touch them. He just sat there in the quiet. The word the doctor used was progressive. He said it carefully, the way doctors learn to say difficult things calmly, clearly, giving you a moment between each sentence to absorb what you've just heard. Early and set, relatively rare. There were things they could do to slow it down. There were things that would help. But progressive meant one direction. It meant the road only went one way. His mother was 51 years old. His father held it together in the room. His mother held it together in the room. They both fell apart at separate times, in separate places, away from each other and away from their son. He knew this, even though they tried to hide it. He heard it. He was 15 now, and he understood more than they thought he did. He didn't cry in the car on the way home. He looked out the window the whole drive and watched the city pass by. And he thought about her hands on the piano keys, hovering in that stillness. He thought about the tunes she used to hum at the kitchen sink. He thought about all the music she had given to other people's children her whole life. All those nervous kids who left her living room a little less afraid. And how she had never once asked for anything back. That night, after his parents had gone to sleep, he went to the living room and sat down at the old piano with the sticky keys and the wobbly leg. He opened the worn notebook she kept on top of it, a blue notebook, soft at the corners, filled with her handwriting. She had written out dozens of pieces in there over the years. Some were for beginners. Some were harder. Some had little notes in the margin in her handwriting. Slow down here, or let it breathe, or a small star next to a measure she especially loved. He looked at the first page for a long time. He didn't know, not yet, what he was going to do. He didn't have the words for it. He was 15, and he had never been the kind of person who made big dramatic decisions or announcements. But somewhere underneath all the things he couldn't say, something settled into place inside him. Something quiet and very certain. He placed his fingers on the keys. He played the first note. It came out a little wrong. He played it again. Kept going. Nobody knew about the notebook except him. He kept it on top of the piano, exactly where she had always left it. The blue one with the soft corners and her handwriting inside. He treated it carefully, the way you handle something that belongs to someone else. Because it did. Every page in there was hers. The small stars she had drawn next to the parts she loved. The little reminders she had written to her students. Breathe here. Don't rush this part. Trust your hands. He read those notes so many times he could have recited them in his sleep. He started practicing before school. 5:30 in the morning. Sometimes earlier. The house was still dark, and his father was still asleep, and the street outside was quiet. He would sit at the piano with the lamp on and work through one piece at a time. He wasn't trying to play them perfectly. He was trying to learn them the way she had played them, the slight pause she always made before a certain chorus, the way she lifted her wrists at the end of a piece like she was letting something go. He wasn't just learning notes. He was learning her. He was not a naturally gifted player. He knew that. Some of his mother's students had picked things up in weeks that took him months. There were evenings when he hit the same wrong note over and over and wanted to close the lid and walk away. He didn't. He just went slower. He thought about the way she used to say to her students, "Let's try it again," and he said it to himself. And he tried again. His father noticed the early mornings eventually. He stood in the hallway one morning, in his work clothes, coffee and watching his son play. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he just said, "You've gotten good." His son shrugged and said he was just practicing. His father nodded and went to make breakfast, and neither of them spoke about it again. But from that morning on, his father made sure the coffee was ready before he left. So there was always a warm cup waiting on the kitchen counter when the boy finally stopped playing. The disease moved the way the doctor had said it would. Slowly at first, then faster. There were still good days. Days when his mother was completely herself, laughing at things, remembering stories, sitting at the piano and picking out small pieces by ear. On those days he would sit beside her on the bench, the way he had as a little boy, and she would show him something and he would pretend he didn't already know it. He wanted her to still feel like the teacher. He wanted her to still have that. But the gaps got longer. The good days got shorter. She started forgetting the names of old friends, then the name of the street they lived on. One afternoon she looked at a photograph on the mantelpiece, a photograph from his parents' wedding, and she studied it for a long time without saying anything. He watched her face. She knew the people in it were important. She just couldn't reach why. He read everything he could find about Alzheimer's. Late at night, after homework, after dinner, after his parents had gone to bed, he read about how it works inside the brain, what it takes first and what it takes last. And he found something that stayed with him for a long time. Musical memory is different from other kinds of memory. It lives in a different part of the brain. It connects to emotion in a way that facts and faces and names don't. Researchers had documented it for years. Patients who couldn't remember their own children's faces could still hear a song from their past and feel something deep move inside them. The music got through when nothing else could. It wasn't a cure. It wasn't a miracle, but it was real. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing or why. He just kept practicing. By the time he was 17, his mother was living in a care facility, 20 minutes from their house. It was a decent place. Quiet hallways, a small garden out the back. Staff who actually learned the residents' names. His father visited every day after work. His son visited every Sunday. He would sit with her and hold her hand and talk to her about ordinary things, what the weather was like, what he'd eaten that week, a funny thing that happened at school. She didn't always know who he was. Sometimes she thought he was a former student. Sometimes she just smiled at him like he was a pleasant stranger. He showed up anyway, every Sunday, without fail. There was a small room near the end of the main hallway at the facility. It had a piano in it, an old upright, not in perfect condition, but tuned well enough. The staff used it for sing-alongs on Friday afternoons. Most evenings it just sat there in the quiet. He asked the staff if he could use it one Sunday evening. They said of course. He asked if he could bring his mother in to sit with him. They helped wheel her chair in and settled her near the window. It was autumn, and the last of the light was coming through the glass in long, low strips. She was having a quiet day. She wasn't distressed. She rarely was. But she was far away. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes were soft and unfocused, looking at something only she could see. He sat down at the piano. He didn't say anything to her. He didn't explain what he was doing. He just placed his hands on the keys, took a breath, and began. He played the first piece from her notebook, the one she had played to wake him when he was small, a gentle, rolling melody that moved like water over stones. He played it exactly the way she used to, the small pause before the chorus, the lift of the wrists at the end. He played it like it was hers, because it was. For the first minute, nothing changed. She sat in her chair by the window, hands in her lap, eyes soft and far away. Then her fingers moved. Not much, just a slight shift at first. Her right hand lifting and pressing gently against her own knee, following the shape of a chord she couldn't have named anymore, but still knew. Somewhere beneath the words and names and memories that had been taken from her, her head tilted very slightly. Her lips parted. She didn't speak. She didn't look at him. But she was there. She was somewhere inside the music, and the music was holding her. He kept playing. He moved from one piece to the next without stopping all the pieces from the notebook, one after another, each one flowing into the last. She stayed with him the whole time. Her hands kept moving gently against her knees. At one point, very quietly, she hummed a few bars. Just a few. The same tune he used to hear drifting from the kitchen when he was 5 years old, sitting on the floor with a toy car. He played for just over an hour. When he finally lifted his hands from the keys, the room was completely still. She was looking at him now, really looking the way she hadn't in a long time. And he wasn't sure. She knew it, but something in her face was open and present and warm. The way a face looks when it recognizes something true, even if it can't say what. He didn't cry until he got to the car. Then he sat in the driver's seat for a while and let himself. He came back every Sunday after that. Always the piano room, always the same notebook, always her chair by the window. Sometimes she hummed. Sometimes she just rested in the music with her eyes closed and her hands moving softly. Sometimes she would reach out and hold his hand while he played, which meant he had to play one-handed for a while, and he did, because he was not going to let go. She passed away 18 months later, on a Tuesday morning in early spring. She was 50. She went peacefully, in her sleep, the way people always hope for but don't always get. He was at school when it happened. His father called him out of class. He already knew before he answered the phone. At her memorial, he played every piece from the notebook. All of them, from memory. Some were short. Some were longer. Some he had never quite gotten perfect, even after years of practice. But he played them anyway. Not for anyone watching. For her. For, after it was over, a woman came up to him, one of his mother's oldest students, now grown, who had driven a long way to be there. She said she hadn't known he had played. She said she remembered his mother used to talk about what a restless little boy he was, always running around, never interested in sitting still long enough to learn anything. He smiled at that. He said his mother had been very patient with him. He still plays every morning before the rest of the world wakes up. The notebook sits on his piano. The same blue notebook, soft at the corners. Her handwriting still clear on every page. He has his own notes in the margins now, written in pencil beside hers. Small reminders to himself. Things she taught him, without knowing, she was teaching him. Slow down here. Let it breathe. Trust your hands.